A competition among flowers hides a much deeper test. 10 young women compete for a place beside the heir to one of the country's largest fortunes, but only one of them carries, without knowing it, the only pot that really matters. And when the truth is revealed, everyone is shocked. Before you find out what happened in the final judgment, give the video a like and subscribe for more stories that bloom from the heart. The entire country came to a standstill when the announcement was published in all major newspapers. Richard Montgomery, the telecommunications magnate known for his billionaire fortune and enigmatic temperament, had announced a contest that turned all eyes to the imposing Windcrest Manor on the hill overlooking the city. "The owner of the most beautiful flower will marry my son." The declaration sounded like something out of an old fairy tale, but it was printed on letterhead paper, with a notarized signature and clear rules. 10 young women, selected from thousands of applicants, would each receive identical vases and rare seeds. They would spend 30 days at the manor caring for their seeds. The one who managed to cultivate the most beautiful flower would become the wife of Nathan Montgomery, the sole heir to the empire built by his father. The news spread quickly, like wildfire in dry fields. In the mansions of Oak Ridge Estates, young women from traditional families discussed strategies with their private gardeners. In luxury apartments, daughters of the newly rich searched Google for advanced gardening techniques. In every corner of high society, the buzz was the same. Who would manage to win the heart of the country's most eligible bachelor through a simple flower? Meanwhile, in the small apartment she shared with her sick mother and 2 younger sisters, Emily Fields observed the old newspaper that wrapped the vegetables she had bought at the farmer's market. Her attentive brown eyes paused on the news of the contest. Normally she would laugh at such things. Beauty contests disguised as fairy tales weren't her type of reading, but something made her stop. "A seed," she murmured to herself, while her hands, calloused from hard work as an assistant at a local flower shop, instinctively caressed the leaves of the small basil plant she kept on the kitchen windowsill. Emily was 25 years old and had a life marked by challenges. Her mother, Sarah Fields, suffered from a rare autoimmune disease that left her increasingly weak. Her twin sisters, Amy and Beth, were still in high school and dreamed of going to college. Emily's salary, supplemented by her mother's small disability pension, barely covered their basic needs. The small inheritance from her grandmother, a piece of land in the countryside where she had spent childhood summers, was threatened by legal disputes with a distant cousin. "You should apply," said Mrs. Fields, surprising her daughter by appearing at the kitchen door leaning on her cane. "Mom, you should be resting," replied Emily, rising to help her mother sit down. "And that's something for rich people with time on their hands. I don't have time for flower contests." "You've always had a way with plants," insisted Mrs. Fields, with that look that mixed tenderness and determination. "Remember how you revived all the plants I let die. Your grandfather always said you had blessed hands." Emily smiled, remembering her grandfather, a simple man who knew each plant by name and talked to them as if they were old friends. He was the one who taught her to respect the earth, to understand the cycles of nature, to recognize that a well-cared-for seed was a potential miracle. "Besides," continued Mrs. Fields, with a mischievous glint in her tired eyes, "the prize could help with my treatment with the girls' college." Emily sighed. It was always like this. No matter how hard she tried to protect her mother from worries, Mrs. Fields knew exactly what weighed on her eldest daughter's shoulders. The experimental treatment that could improve her quality of life, the twins' dreams of studying medicine, and law, the bills that accumulated in the dresser drawer. "It's a contest for people like Victoria Blackwell," argued Emily, referring to the daughter of the owner of the store chain where she had worked before the flower shop. "People who never had to worry about the price of bread or overdue electric bills. It says here you need to be between 20 and 30 years old, never married before, and—" Mrs. Fields adjusted her glasses, reading carefully, "and possess a genuine affinity with nature and its cycles. It doesn't say anything about bank accounts." That same day, after her shift at the flower shop, Emily found herself filling out the online application form. "This is crazy," she repeated to herself, while attaching the only recent photo she had, taken at her sister's 15th birthday party, when she had managed to buy a blue dress on sale. 2 weeks later, when the embossed envelope arrived, Emily almost threw it away, mistaking it for another bill. When she finally opened it, her hands trembled. "Dear Miss Fields, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected to participate in the most beautiful flower contest." The words blurred before her eyes, while Amy and Beth jumped around, the living room screaming with excitement. Mrs. Fields just smiled with that look of someone who had always known this would happen. The day of arrival at Windcrest Manor dawned sunny, as if the sky itself was curious to watch the unfolding of this story. Emily, with a simple backpack containing her few clothes and a gardening book inherited from her grandfather, waited with the other 9 candidates in the imposing entrance hall of the property. The contrast couldn't have been more evident. While the other young women paraded in designer dresses, discreet but expensive jewelry, and an air of familiarity with luxurious environments, Emily stood out precisely because of her simplicity. The blue dress from her sister's birthday, carefully ironed, a single pair of earrings, a gift from her mother, and a simple perfume she had bought especially for the occasion. "Look who managed to get past security," whispered a voice that Emily immediately recognized. Victoria Blackwell, with her perfectly styled blonde hair and impeccable nails, was among those selected. "I thought they were only looking for wife candidates, not the maid." Some of the other contestants laughed discreetly, while Emily felt her face burn. But before she could respond, the double doors of the main hall opened, revealing the imposing figure of Richard Montgomery. Tall, with graying hair and penetrating eyes, the magnate exuded authority. At his side, a young man of similar build, but with a softer air, observed the candidates with discreet curiosity. Nathan Montgomery was even more handsome in person than in the rare photos that appeared in magazines. Tall, with strong features, green eyes, and an expression that seemed simultaneously polite and distant. "Ladies," began Richard, his voice filling the room, "welcome to Windcrest Manor. For the next month, this will be your home. As you already know, each of you will receive an identical vase and seed. The young woman who cultivates the most beautiful flower will have the opportunity to marry my son and sole heir, Nathan." Nathan slightly inclined his head, in a gesture that could be interpreted as courtesy or resignation. Emily couldn't tell which. "You will all have the same conditions, the same soil, the same seed, the same sun exposure. The vases will be kept in the solarium, where each of you will have your designated space. The rest," continued the magnate with a slight smile, "will depend exclusively on you." One of the candidates timidly raised her hand. She was dressed with discreet elegance, and her eyes revealed intelligence. "Mr. Montgomery, what kind of flower are we growing?" "Excellent question, Miss." "Hannah Wilson," replied the young woman, "of the Wilsons from Connecticut." "Miss Wilson," continued Richard, "the seeds are of a rare species of orchid, a variety developed especially for this contest. It requires specific care and, like all precious things in life, patience and dedication." Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. Orchids were notoriously demanding plants. Her grandfather used to say they were like people. They needed to be understood, not just cared for. "Any more questions?" asked Richard, looking directly at Emily, as if he had noticed her discomfort. "Have the seeds been specially treated?" "In any way?" asked Emily, her voice firmer than she expected. "Do they need any process before planting?" A silence fell over the hall. The other candidates looked at her, some with surprise, others with poorly disguised disdain. Richard Montgomery, however, opened a genuine smile. "Another excellent question," he said. "The seeds have already undergone an initial preparation process, but you will receive detailed instructions on how to proceed. The manor's head gardener, Mr. Anthony, will be available for technical guidance." Emily nodded, feeling a little more secure. At least she knew how to ask the right questions. "Now," continued Richard, "my assistant Robert will show each of you to your rooms. At 6 o'clock, we will meet again in the solarium for the delivery of the vases and seeds. Welcome to our home, ladies." As the candidates followed the assistant through the ornate corridors of the manor, Emily couldn't help but notice Nathan's gaze resting on her. It wasn't a look of admiration or romantic interest, but of curiosity, as if she were a discordant element in a carefully composed picture. The room assigned to Emily was larger than the entire apartment where she lived with her family. A king-size bed dominated the center, covered with sheets that seemed made of clouds. Large windows overlooked the lush gardens, and an antique desk waited beside a reading armchair. On the bed, a set of carefully folded clothes awaited, along with a handwritten card. "For use during your stay, we hope they are suitable." Emily touched the fabrics with reverence. They were simple pieces, but of unquestionable quality. Light dresses, comfortable pants, delicate blouses, all in her exact size, in colors that would match her skin tone. How did they know? She murmured to herself, as she allowed herself to sit on the soft bed, suddenly feeling small and out of place in that world of luxury and privilege. At exactly 6 o'clock, all the candidates gathered in the solarium. It was a spacious area with glass walls and ceiling, allowing natural light to flood the environment. 10 identical tables were arranged in a circle, each with a candidate's name engraved on a wooden plaque. On each table, a simple but elegant ceramic vase awaited. Richard Montgomery entered, followed by Nathan and an older man with knotted hands and sun-weathered skin, the head gardener, Anthony. The old gardener carried a small carved wooden box which he placed on a central table. "Ladies," began Richard, "the time has come for you to receive your seeds, Mr. Anthony, please." The gardener opened the box with reverent care, revealing 10 identical small envelopes, each containing a single seed. "These are seeds of the Orchidea Lux Veritatis," explained Anthony, with the measured voice of someone accustomed to talking to plants, not people. "A rare variety developed after years of research. It combines the beauty of traditional orchids with unexpected resilience. But," he added, looking directly at each candidate, "like every orchid, it only blooms under specific conditions. And the most important of these is not water, nor light, nor temperature. It is intention." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. The old gardener's words echoed those of her grandfather. "Plants feel your intention," he always said. "You can't lie to a plant. It knows exactly who you are." One by one, the candidates were called to receive their envelopes. When it was Emily's turn, she noticed a spark of recognition in the gardener's eyes. "Hands that work with the earth," he murmured, as he handed her the envelope, low enough for only her to hear. "The earth recognizes its own daughters." Confused, Emily received the envelope and returned to her place. Inside, a single seed rested, small, dark, seemingly insignificant. "Over the next 30 days, continued Richard Montgomery, "you will come to the solarium every day to care for your seeds. The rest of the time is free for you to explore the mansion and its grounds, with the exception of the private areas, of course. My son and I will be present at some dinners and events so that we can get to know each other better." Next to his father, Nathan maintained a neutral expression, as if this arrangement were as normal as a business meeting. "Gardener Anthony will be available for technical guidance, but remember, the challenge is not just to make the plant grow, but to make it bloom in a unique and special way. As you all must have realized," he added with a slight smile, "this is not a conventional beauty contest. I am not looking for the most beautiful or the richest for my son. I am looking for someone with a quality that is increasingly rare in this world: integrity." A thoughtful silence fell over the solarium as the candidates absorbed the meaning of those words. Emily looked at her seed, so small and apparently fragile, and felt a determination grow within her. She wasn't there for the marriage, nor for the fortune. She was there for her mother, for her sisters, for the small piece of land from her grandmother that she was about to lose. "Good luck to all of you," concluded Richard. "And remember, true beauty is rarely just on the surface." While the other candidates compared their envelopes and whispered among themselves, Emily prepared her vase with the provided substrate, with precise gestures inherited from years of watching her grandfather and cultivating her own plants. She planted her seed, covering it with a thin layer of soil. "Now it's just you and me," she murmured to the vase, not realizing that, from across the solarium, Nathan Montgomery observed her with growing interest. The competition had officially begun, and with it, a journey that would forever transform the life of Emily Fields. The first week at Windcrest Manor quickly established a routine among the 10 candidates. Every morning, after breakfast served in the winter garden, the young women would go to the solarium to care for their seeds. Each developed her own ritual, her own techniques, always under the watchful eye of gardener Anthony. Victoria Blackwell, with her perfectly manicured nails, used imported gardening gloves, and constantly consulted a tablet with information on growing orchids. Hannah Wilson kept a meticulous diary, noting every change, every drop of water, every minute of sun exposure. Other candidates brought music on their cell phones, convinced that the sound would help flowering. Emily, however, had a different approach. Every day she arrived earlier than the others when the sun was still rising. She placed the vase on the designated table and spent a few minutes just observing, in silence, as if listening to something no one else could hear. "Good morning," she always said to the seed in a low voice. "I hope today is a good day to grow." Then, with gentle movements, she watered the substrate with the exact amount of water she felt was needed. She didn't measure with calculations or instruments. She trusted what her hands, worked by years in the flower shop, told her. In the second week, when the first sprouts began to appear in some vases, the tension in the solarium visibly increased. Victoria proudly displayed a small green point emerging from the soil. Hannah observed with contained satisfaction 2 tiny leaves unfolding. 3 other candidates also celebrated the first signs of life. Emily's vase, however, remained apparently inert. No visible sign of germination had emerged from the dark soil. But she continued her daily ritual, unperturbed, talking quietly to the invisible seed. "Maybe your seed is defective," Victoria commented one morning, observing Emily with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Or maybe it's just inexperience. It must be hard to grow rare orchids when you're used to. What was it again, basil on the kitchen windowsill?" Some of the other candidates laughed discreetly. Emily maintained her composure, although she felt her face burn. "Each plant has its own time," she simply replied. "My grandfather used to say that the most precious ones are those that take longer to reveal themselves." "Was your grandfather a botanist?" asked Hannah, genuinely interested. "He was a gardener," replied Emily, with evident pride in her voice. "He took care of the City Hall gardens in our town. He knew every plant by its scientific name, even without ever having set foot in a university." Victoria rolled her eyes, but Hannah smiled respectfully. Practical knowledge is worth as much as theory, sometimes more. The interaction was interrupted by the arrival of gardener Anthony, who came to make his daily inspection. The old man walked slowly among the tables, examining each vase with experienced eyes. When he reached Emily's table, he stopped longer than usual. "Nothing yet?" he asked, his rough voice contrasting with the gentleness of his gaze. "Not yet." "Mr. Anthony," replied Emily, "but she's there, I can feel it." The gardener nodded as if that answer made perfect sense. "You still talk to her?" "Every day." "Good, very good." He cast a quick glance at the other vases. "Remember, not everything that grows fast grows strong." That afternoon, while the other candidates enjoyed the pool or explored the mansion's library, Emily asked permission to visit the outer gardens. She wanted to see other plants, breathe fresh air, feel the soil beneath her bare feet. Windcrest Manor's gardens were spectacular, a mix of formal French landscaping with more natural, almost wild areas. There was a small grove with centuries-old trees, a maze of perfectly trimmed shrubs, an organic vegetable garden, and, in the center of it all, a lake with colorful koi fish. It was there, sitting by the lake, watching the fish glide beneath the crystalline surface, that Emily met Nathan for the first time since the opening ceremony of the contest. "Miss Fields," he greeted, his voice surprisingly warm. "I thought everyone would be in the solarium or enjoying the indoor amenities of the mansion." Emily stood up quickly, suddenly conscious of her simple jeans and the basic t-shirt she was wearing. "Mr. Montgomery, I'm sorry if I'm in a restricted area." "No, not at all," he hastened to clarify. "The gardens are available to everyone. I'm just surprised to see one of the candidates here. The others rarely venture beyond the terrace. I needed to feel the earth, explained Emily with simplicity. Then, as if realizing the strangeness of the statement, she added, I grew up with my grandfather, teaching me the connection between people and soil. Whenever I'm worried or insecure, I seek that contact. Nathan smiled, and for the first time since her arrival, Emily saw something genuine in his green eyes, real curiosity, not the distant politeness he displayed in the formal dinners where the candidates discreetly courted him. Are you worried about your seed? He asked, indicating the stone bench by the lake, silently inviting her to sit down again. Emily hesitated for a moment, but accepted the invitation. There was something in Nathan's presence that didn't correspond to the image of the cold and calculating air that magazines painted. I'm not worried about the seed itself, she finally replied. I know it will germinate when it's ready. I'm more worried about all of this. She made a broad gesture, encompassing the imposing mansion, the impeccable gardens, the surreal situation in which she found herself. Nathan laughed, a genuine sound that made Emily realize how young he was, probably not much older than herself. I confess that I am too. It wasn't exactly my idea to find a wife through a gardening contest. His frankness surprised her. Then why did you agree? My father can be persuasive, replied Nathan, carefully choosing his words, and he really believes that this method will reveal something important about the character of the candidates. And you, what do you believe? The direct question took Nathan by surprise. The other candidates rarely questioned his opinions. They were too busy agreeing with everything he said, or trying to impress him with knowledge about art, literature, or the family business. I believe that people reveal themselves better when they're not trying to prove anything, he finally replied. And what I've seen so far tells me a lot. Before Emily could ask what exactly he had seen, her cell phone rang, a simple ringtone without elaborate music. Her mother's name flashed on the screen. I need to answer, she said, with an urgency she didn't try to hide. It's my mum. Nathan nodded, getting up. Feel free, it was a pleasure talking to you, Emily. As he walked away, Emily answered the call, her heart racing. Mum, is everything okay? Mrs. Field's voice sounded weaker than normal, but she hurried to reassure her daughter. Everything's fine, dear. The girls are taking care of me. We just wanted to know how things are going there. Emily relaxed a little, but something in her mother's tone alerted her. You got worse, didn't you? A brief silence. Just a small relapse. The doctor adjusted the medication. Nothing to worry about. Mom, Emily, listen, interrupted Mrs. Fields with a firmness that didn't match her fragile condition. You are where you need to be right now. The girls and I are fine. The neighbor comes every day and her son takes us to the doctor when we need it. Focus on your seed. After a few more reassuring words and promises to take all medications correctly, Mrs. Fields hung up. Emily remained seated, looking at the lake, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Her seed still hadn't germinated. Her mother was getting worse. The money was running out. And yet something inside her said she needed to remain faithful to the process, faithful to her way of doing things, even when all signs seemed to point to failure. The next morning, when she arrived at the solarium earlier than usual, Emily found Nathan already there, observing the vases with a thoughtful expression. Good morning, he greeted, seeming genuinely pleased to see her. You're up early today. I always wake up early, replied Emily, going to her vase. It's a hard habit to break when you work with plants. Nathan watched as she performed her morning ritual, the moment of silence, the gentle words, the careful watering. There was something almost hypnotic in the naturalness of her movements, in the evident connection with that piece of earth. Still nothing? He asked, noticing the apparently sterile surface. Still nothing visible, corrected Emily. But a lot is happening beneath the surface. How can you be so sure? Emily smiled, a smile that lit up her brown eyes. Because I trust the process. Roots always come before flowers, and strong roots take time. Nathan nodded, thoughtful. My father says something similar about business, that the invisible foundations are more important than the facade everyone sees. Your father seems to be a wise man, commented Emily. Unusual, but wise. Unusual is a kind description, laughed Nathan. Most use less flattering words. Emily also laughed, and in that brief moment something changed between them, an invisible barrier that was beginning to dissolve. The following weeks brought significant changes to the solarium. Most of the seeds had germinated, producing small plants in different stages of development. 3 candidates displayed robust sprouts, with firm and healthy leaves. Victoria and Hannah had the most vigorous plants, silently competing for first place. Emily's vase, however, continued to show only a small and timid sprout, the smallest among all those that had germinated. She didn't let that discourage her, continuing her daily routine with the same dedication. What no one noticed was that, during her nightly visits to the solarium, when everyone was asleep, Emily noticed something strange happening. Some plants seemed to grow at an unnatural pace, as if they had received some stimulant. Others exhibited characteristics inconsistent with the normal development of orchids. One night, while discreetly observing Victoria's vase, Emily heard footsteps approaching. She quickly hid behind a large ornamental plant, heart racing. Victoria entered the solarium, looking around to make sure she was alone. Then, she took a small bag from a vial with transparent liquid, which she carefully poured into the soil of her vase. Afterward, with furtive movements, she added something that looked like a small, already developed seedling, pressing it into the substrate beside the original plant. Emily held her breath, incredulous. Victoria was cheating, trying to ensure that her plant would be the most vigorous, the most impressive. When Victoria finally left, Emily remained hidden, processing what she had just witnessed. Her first reaction was indignation. Should she report the fraud, but to whom? And what proof did she have besides her word against Victoria's daughter of an influential family? The next morning, during breakfast, Emily observed Victoria chatting animatedly with 2 other candidates, gesturing with her perfectly manicured hands, laughing as if she didn't have a care in the world. How could someone cheat so blatantly and maintain such a facade of innocence? "You look worried," commented Hannah, sitting next to Emily with a cup of tea. Among all the candidates, Hannah was the only one with whom Emily had developed something close to a friendship, perhaps because she was the least interested in gossip or petty competitions. "Just thinking about my family," lied Emily, not wanting to share her suspicions without concrete proof. Hannah studied her for a moment, as if she could see beyond the words. "You know, it's not just about having the most beautiful flower, it's about what we're willing to do to get it." The seemingly casual comment made Emily wonder if Hannah had also witnessed something suspicious. But before she could explore the subject, Nathan entered the dining room, causing a small stir among the candidates. "Good morning, everyone," he greeted politely. "My father would like to invite you for a special outing this afternoon. Our company is inaugurating a new botanical research center in the region, and we thought you might enjoy a guided tour." The candidates received the news with enthusiasm, seeing there an opportunity to spend more time with Nathan outside the formal environment of the mansion. Emily, however, felt a pang of apprehension. She was reluctant to leave her plant, especially after discovering that cheating was happening. As if reading her thoughts, Nathan added, "Mr. Anthony will personally care for all the plants during our absence. They will be in good hands." Later, as everyone prepared for the outing, Emily made a quick visit to the solarium to check on her small plant. The sprout was still tiny, but she noticed something new. A second little leaf was beginning to form, almost imperceptible to less trained eyes. "It's happening," she murmured to herself, with a smile of satisfaction. "Keep going, little one. Don't rush. We're doing things the right way." What Emily didn't notice was that, from across the solarium, Richard Montgomery was observing her with growing interest, noting the genuine connection between the young woman and her plant. A slight smile formed on the magnate's lips, as if a particular theory was being confirmed before his eyes. During the tour of the research center, Emily was amazed by the technology and resources dedicated to the study and preservation of botanical species. State-of-the-art laboratories worked on developing varieties more resistant to climate change, seed banks preserved endangered species, and scientists dedicated their lives to understanding the plant world. At one point during the tour, when the group had dispersed slightly, Emily found herself beside Nathan, observing an experiment with orchids in a controlled environment. "Your father really takes the world of plants seriously," she commented, genuinely impressed. "It's more than a hobby for him," confirmed Nathan. "After my mother left us, he found in plants a way to connect with something greater than himself. I think it was his way of dealing with the loss." The mention of Nathan's absent mother hit Emily as a painful reminder of her own situation. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said sincerely. Nathan studied her for a moment. "It's different for you, isn't it? You're not here for the money or the social position." It wasn't a question, but Emily felt it deserved an answer. "I'm here for my family," she admitted. "My mother is sick, my sisters need education, and we have a small property that could be taken at any moment due to legal disputes. If I win—" She stopped, realizing how mercenary it sounded. "If you win, you'll use the resources to help your family," completed Nathan, with no judgment in his voice. "That's a more honorable reason than most." The rest of the tour continued with Emily, more aware of Nathan's presence, noticing how he remained polite but distant with the other candidates, while with her there seemed to be a genuine openness. More than once she caught Victoria observing them with a calculating look, as if assessing a potential threat. Upon returning to the mansion late in the afternoon, Emily ran to the solarium to check on her plant. To her surprise and relief, the small sprout seemed unchanged, neither better nor worse than when she left it. Gardener Anthony appeared silently by her side. "Don't worry," he said with his hoarse voice. "I kept an eye on it. No one touched your vase." Emily looked around, making sure they were alone. "Mr. Anthony, I think some candidates are artificially enhancing their plants." The old gardener nodded slowly, not seeming surprised. "I've noticed too, and it's not just extra fertilizer. What should I do?" asked Emily, suddenly feeling very young and inexperienced in the face of the situation. "Keep doing exactly what you're doing," replied Anthony, with a quiet certainty in his voice. "Care for your plant with honesty. The rest—" He made a significant pause, looking at the other vases. "The rest will resolve itself in due time." That night in her room, Emily received another call from home. The news wasn't good. Her mother had been hospitalized after a sudden collapse. The twins were frightened. The money for treatment was running out, and her cousin's lawyers had filed a new motion to expedite the taking of the family land. "Maybe I should come back," suggested Emily, silent tears streaming down her face. "No!" Mrs. Field's voice, even weak, sounded determined. "I'm stable now. The doctors say it was just a reaction to the change in medication. Stay where you are. Complete what you started." After hanging up, Emily remained seated on the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. Her small plant grew slowly, honestly, while others flourished with the aid of cheating. Her mother was wasting away in a hospital bed while she was here, in a luxurious mansion, participating in a contest that seemed increasingly distant from reality. A soft knock on the door interrupted her somber thoughts. When she opened it, she found Hannah standing in the corridor holding a tray with tea and cookies. "I heard you crying," explained the other candidate kindly. "I thought maybe you'd like some company." Emily hesitated only for an instant before fully opening the door, allowing Hannah to enter. She desperately needed a friend, someone with whom to share her burden, even if just for one night. What she didn't know was that, at that exact moment, a secret meeting was taking place in Richard Montgomery's office. The magnate, his son Nathan, and Gardener Anthony were discussing in low voices, observing images captured by cameras discreetly positioned in the solarium. "So I was right," murmured Richard, observing the recording that clearly showed Victoria and two other candidates manipulating their plants. "Character always reveals itself under pressure." "And what about Emily?" asked Nathan, unable to completely hide his interest. "Her plant is the smallest, the most fragile." "But it's the only true one," replied Gardener Anthony, with the wisdom of someone who had spent an entire lifetime observing the silent growth of things. "The only one that's growing by its own means, nourishing itself only with honest care and patience." Richard smiled, satisfied. "We need to see how far this goes. The test isn't over yet." Meanwhile, in her room, Emily told Hannah about her family, about her mother's illness, about the difficulties they faced. She didn't mention her suspicions about the cheating, nor what she had witnessed Victoria doing. Something told her to keep that information to herself, at least for now. Hannah listened attentively, offering comfort and understanding. When she finally said goodbye, late at night, she squeezed Emily's hand sincerely. "You're stronger than you think," she said, "and there's more going on in this contest than any of us imagine." Those enigmatic words accompanied Emily as she finally fell asleep, exhausted by the emotional turmoil of the day. In her dreams, she saw her small plant growing, slowly but steadily, its roots deepening invisibly beneath the surface, preparing for something extraordinary that was yet to come. The third week at Windcrest Manor brought dramatic changes to the contest. The plants now showed their true potential, some growing at an impressive pace, others revealing unusual colors and complex structures. Victoria's displayed luxuriant leaves and what appeared to be the beginning of a flower bud. Hannah maintained a plant of more modest growth, but extremely healthy. Emily's small sprout remained the smallest among all, but there was a subtle change. Its few leaves had a deeper, more vibrant shade of green than the others. Gardener Anthony, during his daily inspections, always stopped longer in front of her vase, observing with interest that small manifestation of life. "The small ones are always the most resilient," he commented one morning when he found Emily alone in the solarium. "They have to fight harder for the sun, for water, for space. That struggle makes them stronger." Emily smiled, grateful for the encouragement. The news from home remained worrying. Her mother had been discharged from the hospital but was weaker than before. Medical bills were piling up. The deadline to contest her cousin's legal action was running out. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing," she confessed to the old gardener. "Staying here while my family faces so many problems." Anthony observed her with his wise eyes. "You're where you need to be. Some battles we need to fight on unexpected terrain." Before they could continue the conversation, Victoria entered the solarium, followed by two other candidates. Seeing Emily talking with the gardener, Victoria smiled, that smile that never reached her eyes. "Asking for special tips, Emily? I don't know if that's allowed by the rules." "Just a conversation between people who respect plants," replied Anthony, with surprising firmness. "You could learn a lot from that, miss." Victoria seemed momentarily disconcerted by the gardener's direct response, but soon regained her posture. "Well, I think we all do what we can with what we have, don't we?" Her gaze turned to Emily's small sprout. "Some simply have less to work with." After Victoria walked away, Anthony murmured, "Be careful with that one. There's poison in her words and deeds." That afternoon, a committee of doctors hired by Richard Montgomery arrived at the mansion to evaluate the development of the plants. The candidates were temporarily removed from the solarium while the experts conducted their analyses. Emily used the free time to call her sisters. The twins tried to sound excited, but she knew their tone of voice well. They were scared, overwhelmed with the responsibility of caring for their sick mother. "Do you need money?" asked Emily, feeling the helplessness of being so far away. "We're okay for now," replied Amy, always the more practical of the two. "The neighbor lent us a little for this month's medicine." "And school?" "We managed," intervened Beth. "The important thing is for you to stay there. How is your plant?" Emily hesitated, small but strong. "Like you," said Amy, with a confidence that made Emily's heart tighten. After hanging up, Emily walked through the mansion's gardens, trying to organize her thoughts. That was when she noticed dark clouds accumulating on the horizon. A storm was approaching, both literally and metaphorically. "Bad weather coming," commented Nathan, suddenly appearing beside her. The meteorologist warned about a considerable storm. Emily observed the sky, feeling the change in air pressure. "Plants can feel this before we do," she said. "They must already be preparing." Nathan studied her with growing interest. "You always talk about them as if they were conscious beings." "In a way they are," replied Emily. "They respond to the environment, adapt, communicate in their own way. They just don't speak our language." A distant thunder punctuated her words. Nathan checked his watch. The evaluation committee must be concluding. Let's go back before the rain starts. When they returned to the mansion, they found a tense atmosphere among the candidates. The committee had concluded its preliminary assessment, and rumors were circulating about possible eliminations. "I heard they're going to disqualify those using artificial methods," whispered Hannah to Emily, as they waited in the main hall. "Apparently they found traces of growth hormones in some plants." Emily felt a chill. How did they discover it? "Laboratory tests on the leaves, soil analysis." Hannah hesitated. "Emily, you didn't do anything like that, did you?" "Of course not," replied Emily, surprised by the question. "Did you?" Hannah smiled, seeming relieved. "No, I'd rather lose honestly than win by cheating." The conversation was interrupted when Richard Montgomery entered the hall, followed by Nathan and the doctors from the committee. The magnate's face was serious, his eyes examining each candidate with disconcerting intensity. "Ladies," he began, "the committee has concluded its preliminary analysis. I must say I am disappointed with some findings." An anxious murmur ran through the group. Victoria maintained a neutral expression, but her fingers drummed nervously on the armchair. "This contest was created to test not only gardening skills, but character," continued Richard. "Unfortunately, not everyone understood that. 3 plants showed clear evidence of chemical manipulation, growth hormones, flowering accelerators, substances that don't belong in the natural cultivation of orchids." The silence was absolute now. Even the candidates' breathing seemed suspended. "Those responsible will be notified individually and will have the opportunity to explain their actions," concluded Richard. "At this moment, there will be no eliminations, but the committee will take these discoveries into consideration in the final judgment." As he finished speaking, the first lightning illuminated the hall's windows, followed by the rumble of thunder. The storm had arrived. During dinner, the tension was palpable. 3 candidates, including one of Victoria's closest friends, had received discreet envelopes. No one knew exactly the content, but their pale faces said enough. Surprisingly, Victoria was not among those notified. Emily observed her from afar, confused. She had witnessed Victoria manipulating her plant, so how had she escaped detection? The answer came later, when Emily accidentally crossed paths with gardener Anthony in the corridors. "She's smart," he murmured, perceiving Emily's thoughts. "She used methods that don't leave detectable chemical traces, partial plant substitution, sophisticated grafts. So she'll continue in the contest. That's not fair." Anthony smiled enigmatically. "Justice and rules don't always go hand in hand, girl. But don't worry. Truth has a way of coming to the surface, especially in moments of pressure." The storm increased during the night, turning into one of the worst the region had faced in years. Howling winds whipped the mansion's windows, and lightning illuminated the corridors in ghostly flashes. Unable to sleep, Emily decided to check on her plant. The solarium, with its glass walls and ceiling, was particularly vulnerable to extreme weather. On the way, she met Hannah, apparently with the same idea. "Worried too?" asked Hannah as they walked together through the dark corridors, illuminated only by emergency lights. "Plants are sensitive to atmospheric changes," explained Emily. "A storm like this can stress them." When they reached the solarium, they found Nathan and gardener Anthony already there, checking the integrity of the structure. Part of the glass ceiling had been damaged, and rain was entering through a small opening, wetting one corner of the room. "We need to move the vases from that area," instructed Anthony, pointing to where water was beginning to accumulate. The 4 worked quickly, moving the vases to safe areas. When Emily went to fetch Victoria's vase, she noticed something strange, a small change in the plant's structure, as if a part had been recently added. Before she could examine it better, a deafening crash shook the solarium. A branch had broken part of the ceiling, creating a larger opening. Wind and rain entered violently. "Everyone back!" shouted Nathan, pulling Emily away from the impact area. In the chaos that followed, with everyone trying to save as many plants as possible, Emily saw her own vase being hit by a particularly strong jet of water. The small sprout, so fragile, bent under the pressure. "No!" she cried, running to rescue her plant. The water had stirred the substrate, partially exposing the roots. To her surprise, Emily discovered that, although small above the surface, her sprout had an impressively developed root system, strong, healthy roots, much larger than the size of the visible part would suggest. "Amazing," murmured Hannah, observing next to her. "It's been developing strength where no one could see." Carefully, Emily replaced the substrate around the roots, protecting that vital structure again. "It's like my grandfather used to say, what really matters is beneath the ground." Nathan observed the scene with growing admiration. There was something in Emily's dedication, in the way she connected with that small life that deeply touched him. Eventually, they managed to stabilize the situation. A maintenance team was called to make temporary repairs to the ceiling, and all plants were examined for damage. The storm continued through the early morning, but the solarium was now protected. Emily remained beside her plant for hours, talking to it in a low voice like a mother comforting a frightened child. "You're stronger than you look," she said. "We survived this storm. We'll survive others." The next morning, when the storm finally abated, the sun rose, revealing a scene of destruction in the mansion's gardens. Fallen trees, destroyed flowers, paths blocked by debris. In the solarium, however, a surprise awaited. Emily's plant, that small and apparently fragile creation, had not only survived the storm, it had responded to it. A new sprout, stronger and more vigorous, emerged next to the original. "It's the plant's response to stress," explained Anthony, examining the phenomenon with experienced eyes. "Some species, when threatened, invest even more energy in growth. It's a survival mechanism." Other plants had also been affected by the storm, but in different ways. Some lost leaves or showed signs of trauma. Victoria's lush plant, in particular, seemed to have suffered a peculiar blow. Part of it had separated, revealing an inconsistent internal structure, as if it were composed of different elements forced to coexist. "Interesting," murmured Anthony, carefully observing Victoria's vase. "Very interesting." Richard Montgomery visited the solarium later that day, assessing the damage and the state of the plants. When he reached Emily's vase, he stopped longer, observing the new growth with evident interest. "Resilience," he commented. "The capacity not only to survive adversity, but to grow through it. A rare quality, Miss Fields." Emily didn't know what to answer, but she felt that something important had changed. The storm in its destructive fury had revealed truths about the plants, about the candidates, and mainly about herself. That night, a special dinner was offered to mark the beginning of the contest's final week. The 10 candidates, Richard, Nathan, and some special guests, gathered in the mansion's grand dining hall. During the meal, Richard announced, "After consultation with the experts, we decided to bring forward the final judgment. In 3 days, we will know which flower and which young woman will be the winner." 3 days. Emily felt her heart race. Her plant was just beginning to show its true potential, while others already displayed more developed structures. Would it be enough time? As if reading her thoughts, Nathan, seated beside her, murmured, "Sometimes it's not the size of the flower that matters, but the story it tells." Emily stared at him, surprised by the depth of those words. There was something in his eyes, an intensity, a connection, that went far beyond the contest, far beyond a planned marital arrangement. At the other end of the table, Victoria observed the interaction with calculating eyes. The storm had damaged her carefully elaborated strategy, but she was not someone who gave up easily. 3 days, whispered Hannah to Emily, as they went up to their rooms together after dinner. "A lot can happen in 3 days." Emily nodded, thinking of her family, her sick mother, her hopeful sisters, her grandmother's threatened land. 3 days to change everything, or lose everything. "Whatever's meant to be will be," she finally replied with a tranquility that surprised even herself. "I cared for my plant with honesty. The rest is not in my hands." What Emily didn't know was that that same night, Victoria was planning one last, desperate move, one that would test not only Emily's future in the contest, but her own integrity. The morning following Richard's announcement brought a palpable tension to Windcrest Manor. With only 3 days until the final judgment, Each candidate intensified her care for the plants. The solarium bustled with activity from dawn, with young women whispering to their vases, applying homemade nutrient mixtures, or simply anxiously observing each leaf and sprout. Emily arrived as always at sunrise, when the solarium was still empty. Her small plant, inspired by the storm, showed promising signs. The new sprout was growing with surprising vigor, and the green tone of the leaves had an intensity that no other plant in the contest presented. "Good morning, little warrior," murmured Emily, gently caressing one of the leaves. 3 more days together. Let's do the best we can, right? Do you really believe she understands you? Nathan's voice surprised her. He was standing at the entrance to the solarium, observing her with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. "Not in the way we understand words," replied Emily, unperturbed, "but plants respond to presence, touch, even the vibrations of voice. It's a different communication, but it exists." Nathan approached, carefully observing Emily's vase. "It's growing faster now." "The storm awakened it," explained Emily. "Some plants need a challenge to reveal their true strength." "Like people," commented Nathan, his eyes meeting hers. That moment of connection was interrupted by the arrival of other candidates. Victoria entered accompanied by 2 friends, all casting curious glances at Nathan and Emily. "Good morning, Nathan," greeted Victoria with a studied smile. "Have you come to check on our creations?" "Just observing," he replied politely, moving a bit away from Emily. All the plants seemed to be developing well. Victoria directed a quick look at Emily's vase. Some better than others, apparently. The storm seems to have been beneficial for certain participants. The tone insinuated much more than the words said, but Emily chose not to respond to the provocation. Instead, she focused on her plant, continuing her morning routine with the same dedication as always. During breakfast, Richard Montgomery announced a change in the schedule. "Ladies, to properly prepare the judgment event, we will need the plants to be transferred to the Grand Hall tomorrow night. Mr. Anthony will personally supervise each transfer to ensure that no plant is damaged in the process." The news caused some discomfort among the candidates. Moving the plants represented a risk, especially for those with more delicate structures. Emily, however, felt a strange relief. Her plant, with its strong root system and compact structure, would probably suffer less in transport. After breakfast, Emily received an unexpected call. It was from the hospital where her mother was being treated. "Miss Fields, this is Dr. Martinez. Your mother had a relapse this morning." Emily's world seemed to freeze. "How serious?" she managed to ask, her voice trembling. "We've stabilized the situation, but she'll need a new treatment, an experimental treatment that—" The doctor hesitated. "That isn't covered by the health insurance." Emily closed her eyes, feeling the weight of those words. "How much?" The amount mentioned by the doctor made her stomach sink. It was an impossible sum for her financial reality, unless she won the contest. "I'll find a way," promised Emily, trying to keep her voice steady. "Please do what you can for her in the meantime." After hanging up, Emily remained motionless for long minutes, trying to process the situation. 2 days. Everything depended on the next 2 days, and on a small plant that, although growing, was still the smallest among all the competitors. When she finally left her room, she found Hannah in the corridor carrying a book about rare orchids. "Is everything okay?" asked Hannah, immediately noticing Emily's pale face. "My mother got worse," replied Emily, feeling a strange relief in sharing the burden. "She needs a treatment we can't afford." Hannah spontaneously hugged her. "I'm sorry. Is there anything I can do?" Emily shook her head. "Unless you can magically make my plant grow in the next 2 days, there's not much to do." The two walked together to the solarium, talking about their families. Hannah, daughter of a traditional Connecticut family, revealed that she too was participating in the contest for reasons beyond marriage. "My father lost almost everything in bad investments," she confessed in a low voice. "The family mansion is mortgaged and our company is on the verge of bankruptcy. No one knows that yet. I'm here because—" She hesitated. Because a marriage with the Montgomery family would save everything. Emily squeezed Hannah's hand. We're more alike than I thought. In the solarium, a surprise awaited Emily. Her plant, in just a few hours since her morning visit, had produced a small but distinctive bud. It was tiny compared to the buds already developed in Victoria's and other candidates' plants, but its presence was undeniable, a sign that the little fighter was finally ready to bloom. It happened, murmured Emily, moved. Gardener Anthony, who was examining another plant nearby, approached to see. A slow smile spread across his wrinkled face. At the right time, he said, neither before nor after, exactly when it should. For the rest of the day, Emily divided her time between caring for her plant and making desperate calls to banks, trying to secure a loan for her mother's treatment. All attempts were fruitless. Without guarantees or stable income, no institution was willing to take the risk. At night, unable to sleep, Emily decided to make one last visit to the solarium before the transfer scheduled for the next day. The place was silent and bathed in the soft light of the moon that entered through the glass walls. Her vase was exactly as she had left it, the small bud now slightly more perceptible. She sat next to it, feeling strangely at peace despite all the worries. "We did the best we could, didn't we?" she whispered to the plant. "Whatever happens tomorrow, thank you for accompanying me on this journey." A soft sound alerted her that she wasn't alone. Instinctively, Emily hid behind a large ornamental plant, observing the door. Victoria entered furtively, looking around to make sure she was alone. In her hands, a small vial of dark liquid and a case that seemed to contain delicate instruments. With calculated steps, Victoria went directly to Emily's vase. She took a small syringe from the case and, with clinical precision, injected the contents of the vial into the substrate near the roots of the plant. Emily felt her blood freeze. Victoria was sabotaging her plant. She was about to jump from her hiding place when she noticed another presence in the solarium, a shadow moving silently near the entrance. It was Gardener Anthony, observing the entire scene with attentive eyes. He made a subtle gesture for Emily to remain hidden. After Victoria left, convinced that her act had not been witnessed, Anthony quickly approached Emily's vase. "Concentrated herbicide," he murmured, examining the now contaminated substrate. "Would kill the plant in a matter of hours. We need to do something," exclaimed Emily, coming out of her hiding place, her eyes burning with tears of anger and despair. "And we will," replied Anthony calmly, "but not as you imagine. Come with me." He took Emily to a small room at the back of the solarium, his private office. From a locked cabinet, he retrieved a vase identical to the one used in the contest and a sealed package. "These are the original seeds," he explained, "the same ones that were distributed to everyone. We're going to replant your orchid exactly as you did on the first day." "But what about the growth, the bud?" protested Emily. "It took weeks to get here." Anthony looked at her with an intensity that made her fall silent. "Trust the process, girl, just as you've trusted from the beginning." Working together through the early morning, Emily and Anthony prepared a new vase with fresh substrate and carefully planted a new seed. The contaminated vase was isolated, preserved as evidence. "Now you must rest," instructed the gardener. When they finished, "Tomorrow will be an important day." "But the new seed won't have time to grow," argued Emily, exhausted and confused. "The transfer to the Grand Hall is tomorrow night." "Trust," repeated Anthony, with an enigmatic gleam in his tired eyes. "Truth has its own time." The next morning, Emily woke up late, exhausted from the sleepless night. When she finally arrived at the solarium, she found the other candidates already there, preparing their plants for the evening's transfer. Her new vase was where it should be, the substrate apparently untouched, with no visible sign of life. The contrast with the other plants, some now displaying buds about to open, was disheartening. Victoria approached, displaying false sympathy. "Oh, Emily, what happened? Your plant looks different today." "Each plant has its own path," replied Emily, forcing herself to stay calm. "Some grow in a straight line, others need to take detours to find the light." Victoria narrowed her eyes. intrigued by the enigmatic response, but was distracted by Nathan's arrival at the solarium. "Miss Blackwell," he called with unusual formality, "my father would like to speak with you in his office immediately." Something in his tone made Victoria's smile falter momentarily. She nodded, adjusted her expensive dress, and left the solarium with her head held high, although a visible uneasiness had settled in her eyes. Nathan then approached Emily. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. "You look tired." "Difficult night," she replied simply. He looked at the apparently empty vase in front of her. "What happened to your plant?" "Yesterday there was a bud." "Trust the process," replied Emily, repeating Anthony's words, although she didn't fully understand their meaning. Nathan studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "My father always says that nature has its own wisdom. We rarely understand its methods, but we always respect its results." Later that day, a commotion swept through the mansion. Victoria Blackwell had been seen leaving hurriedly, escorted by security guards. Contradictory rumors circulated. Some said she had voluntarily withdrawn, others that she had been disqualified for serious violation of the rules. During lunch, Richard Montgomery made a brief announcement. "Due to circumstances that need not be explained now, Miss Blackwell will no longer participate in the contest. The judgment ceremony will take place tomorrow night, as planned." Hannah, seated next to Emily, whispered, "Do you know anything about this?" Emily just shook her head. Although she knew exactly what had prompted Victoria's exit, she had promised Anthony that she would keep silent about the incident until he and the Montgomerys decided how to proceed. In the afternoon, as scheduled, the plants were carefully transferred to the Grand Hall. One by one, the candidates accompanied their vases, ensuring they were properly positioned on the elegant pedestals prepared for the occasion. When it was Emily's turn, she carried her vase with the same dignity and care she would give to a plant in full bloom, not an apparently empty substrate. Some of the other candidates exchanged confused or sympathetic glances. "She doesn't stand a chance," she heard one of them whisper. "Poor thing couldn't even get the seed to germinate properly." Emily ignored the comments, positioning her vase exactly as Anthony had instructed, in a specific location where the natural light of the following morning would bathe it first. That night, the last before the final judgment, Emily received an unexpected call. It was from the hospital, but it didn't bring bad news. "Miss Fields, this is Dr. Martinez again. I wanted to inform you that your mother has been accepted into the experimental program I mentioned. All costs will be covered." "How?" asked Emily, dazed. "I couldn't get the loan." "An anonymous benefactor made a generous donation specifically for her case," explained the doctor. "We don't know who it is, and the conditions include maintaining anonymity." After hanging up, still in shock, Emily found Hannah in the corridor. "A miracle happened," she told her, her voice trembling with emotion. "Someone paid for my mother's treatment that costs a fortune." Hannah smiled, hugging her. "Some angels don't have wings, but they have bank accounts. I'm so happy for you." Later, passing by Richard's office, Emily heard voices. Nathan was arguing with his father. "It wasn't necessary to wait for the ceremony," Nathan was saying in a frustrated tone. "We already know the result." "Patience, son," replied Richard calmly. "The process needs to be respected until the end. Some lessons are only learned when fully lived." Emily moved away silently, not wanting to be caught eavesdropping, but those words echoed in her mind as she prepared for sleep. The next day, the day of the final judgment, Emily woke before dawn. Driven by an inexplicable urgency, she quickly dressed and headed to the Grand Hall, still in darkness. The hall was silent, illuminated only by the faint light that preceded sunrise. The vases waited on their pedestals, some displaying robust plants, others with buds about to bloom. Emily approached her vase, her heart racing. The substrate that yesterday seemed sterile now showed something. It was almost imperceptible in the dim light, but there was a presence there, an energy that didn't exist before. And then, as the first rays of sun penetrated through the hall's large eastern windows, something extraordinary happened. The first ray of light touched her vase directly, and as if responding to a call, A perfect sprout visibly emerged from the substrate, growing at impossible speed, like in a time-lapse. Film? Emily held her breath, unable to believe what her eyes were witnessing. In minutes, what was just a sprout became a firm stem, which produced delicate leaves and finally a bud. And when the sun finally completely flooded the hall, the bud opened, revealing a flower of incomparable beauty. Not the largest, nor the most exuberant, but possessing an inner luminosity, a perfection of form and color that no other plant exhibited. "The Orchidea lux veritatis," said a voice behind her, "the orchid of the light of truth." Emily turned to find Richard, Nathan and gardener Anthony observing the miracle with satisfied smiles, as if they had expected exactly that moment. "But how?" she stammered, turning back to look at the impossible flower. "All the seeds distributed at the beginning of the contest were sterile," explained Richard, approaching. "Deliberately treated not to germinate, no matter what they did. It was a test," continued Nathan. "We didn't want to see who could cultivate the most beautiful flower, but who would maintain their integrity when confronted with apparent failure. The other candidates, one by one, replaced their original seeds or used artificial methods," completed Anthony. "All except you." "But this flower," insisted Emily, confused. "It's real. How could it have grown from a sterile seed?" Richard smiled, a smile that resembled his son's. "This isn't the same seed, Emily. When we replanted yesterday after Victoria's sabotage, we used the only true seed, the one I've kept for years, waiting for the right moment. The Orchidea lux veritatis bloomed only for you, because only you deserved to see it in all its glory." Emily looked at the magnificent flower, then at the three men, tears of understanding shining in her eyes. "The real test was never about flowers," concluded Nathan, approaching her with eyes that no longer hid the admiration and something deeper. "It was about truth, integrity, and the courage to follow the right path, even when it seems to lead nowhere." In that moment, with the morning sun bathing the hall in golden light and the most extraordinary flower she had ever seen shining before, Emily understood that, regardless of the official result that would be announced that night, she had already found something more precious than any prize. She had found herself. The grand hall of Windcrest Manor was magnificently decorated for the final ceremony. Luxurious floral arrangements adorned each pillar. Soft lights created a fairy tale atmosphere, and in the center of it all, on elegant pedestals arranged in a semicircle, the finalists' plants awaited judgment. The 8 remaining candidates, after Victoria's disqualification and another young woman's voluntary withdrawal, were gathered on one side of the hall, all dressed in formal attire. Emily wore a simple but elegant dress, mysteriously sent to her room that afternoon, with a card that simply said, "For you to shine like your flower." Hundreds of illustrious guests filled the space. Important business people, political figures, celebrities, and members of high society. The entire elite of the country seemed to be present to witness the outcome of the contest that had captured the public imagination. "Nervous?" asked Hannah, discreetly approaching Emily. "Strangely calm," replied Emily with a small smile, as if everything had already been decided long ago. Hannah nodded, understanding. "I saw your flower early this morning. It's extraordinary. Different from anything I've ever seen." "It's the Orchidea lux veritatis," explained Emily, "a species I didn't even know existed until this morning." "Well deserved," said Hannah, gently squeezing her friend's arm. "No one deserves it more than you." A soft bell tone announced the beginning of the ceremony. Richard Montgomery ascended to the small stage erected for the occasion, imposing in his impeccable suit. Nathan followed him, elegant and serious, although his eyes briefly sought Emily's among the candidates. "Good evening, everyone," began Richard, his amplified voice filling the hall. "I thank each of you for your presence on this special occasion. As many know, this contest was born from an unusual idea, to find a wife for my son, not through conventional criteria of wealth or social status, but through a quality increasingly rare in our world: integrity." A murmur ran through the audience. Richard continued, 30 days ago, 10 young women received seemingly identical seeds. They were instructed to cultivate them under the same conditions, with the same soil, the same sun exposure. The young woman who produced the most beautiful flower would become my son's wife and heir to our family. He made a dramatic pause, his eyes scanning the guests. What none of them knew, what no one knew besides me, my son, and our faithful gardener, was that the seeds distributed were sterile, deliberately treated not to germinate no matter how much care they received. Exclamations of surprise echoed through the hall. The candidates, except Emily, exchanged confused and alarmed glances. "It was a test," explained Richard. "We didn't want to see who could cultivate the most beautiful flower. We wanted to see who would maintain their integrity when confronted with apparent failure. Who would be honest enough to admit that their seed had not germinated instead of resorting to subterfuge." Nathan stepped forward, taking the floor. "During these 4 weeks, we carefully observed. One by one, 9 candidates replaced their original seeds, used secretly purchased seedlings, applied growth hormones, or performed sophisticated grafts. Some went to the point of sabotaging competitors' plants." The silence that fell over the hall was absolute. Some candidates lowered their eyes, ashamed. Others maintained expressions of shock, realizing that their maneuvers had been discovered. Only one, continued Nathan, his gaze finding Emily's, remained faithful to the process. Only one cared daily for a seed that seemed not to respond. Without ever trying to cheat or take shortcuts, only one faced the possibility of failure with dignity and perseverance. Richard resumed. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Miss Emily Fields." All eyes turned to Emily, who felt her face burn with the sudden attention. With an elegant gesture, Richard invited her to join him and Nathan on the stage. With hesitant steps, Emily climbed the few stairs, conscious of the contrast between her humble origins and all that opulence. Still, there was a natural dignity in her posture, a silent strength that many in the hall could not help but notice. "Miss Fields," continued Richard, "your integrity impressed us all. When we discovered that another candidate had sabotaged your plant on the eve of judgment, we offered you a true seed, the only genuine seed in this entire contest." He indicated the pedestal where the Orchidea Lux Veritatis shone with its own light, its incomparable beauty provoking gasps among the guests who were seeing it for the first time. "This is the rarest flower that exists," explained Richard. "It blooms only once in each generation, and according to legend, only for those of pure heart. The fact that it bloomed for you, Emily, only confirms what we already knew." Nathan took Emily's hands in his, turning to face her. "I'm not just looking for a wife," he said, with a sincerity that silenced even the most cynical in the audience. "I'm looking for a heart that resonates with mine, someone who shares my deepest values. During these weeks, I've known the real Emily, not just the candidate, but the woman who cares more for her family than herself, who talks to plants because she sees life where others see only objects, who maintains her integrity, even when everything else seems to indicate she should give up." A gentle smile illuminated Nathan's face. "I'm not asking you to marry me today," he continued. "It would be premature and unfair to both of us. What I'm offering is an opportunity, a path that we can walk together, learning about each other, building something genuine and lasting." Emily felt an intense emotion run through her. It wasn't just the public recognition. It wasn't the material prize she knew would come. It was the validation of everything her grandfather had taught her, of all the values her mother had instilled in her, of all the difficult choices she had made throughout life, always trying to follow the path of honesty. "Before you answer," intervened Richard, "there's something else you need to know as part of our family's commitment to the causes we defend. We've already taken some measures." He made a gesture and a large screen descended from one side of the hall. On it, images of Emily's small apartment appeared, but transformed, renovated, adapted with modern medical equipment. "Your mother is receiving the best available treatment," explained Nathan. "International specialists were consulted, and a complete therapeutic plan was implemented." The images changed, showing Emily's twin sisters receiving enrollment documents at one of the best schools in the country. "Your sisters will have the education they dreamed of," he continued, "without commitments or obligations linked to your decision." Finally, the screen showed the small rural property that had belonged to Emily's grandmother, but now with official documents with her name, land regularization stamps, and sustainable expansion plans. Your family's land is safe, concluded Nathan, legally protected and expanded, so it can be preserved for future generations. Silent tears streamed down Emily's face. Why? She managed to ask. Why do all this before even knowing my answer? Was Richard who replied, because true gifts should not come with conditions. Because your family deserves security regardless of your decision about us. And because, he added with a genuine smile, we wanted you to be able to choose with a free heart, not pressured by need or desperation. The entire hall was moved. Even the other candidates, though disappointed, seemed touched by the scene they were witnessing. So Emily Fields, continued Nathan, still holding her hands, I'm not asking for a definitive answer today. I'm asking permission to truly know you so that we can discover together if what we glimpsed in these weeks can blossom into something as beautiful as your orchid. Emily took a deep breath, looking at Nathan, at Richard, at the audience of expectant faces. Finally, her eyes rested on her flower, the Orchidea lux veritatis, shining with its own light, like a symbol of everything she had lived and learned. Yes, she finally replied with simplicity and honesty. I would like that very much. The audience erupted in applause. Nathan embraced Emily with genuine joy, and for a moment, amidst the opulence of the grand hall, two people from completely different worlds found a point of true connection. 6 months later, the garden of the flower house, as Emily affectionately called the country house where she now lived with her recovered mother and sisters, was in full spring splendor. Mrs. Fields, with significantly improved health thanks to specialized treatment, supervised the twins as they prepared the outdoor table for Sunday lunch. He's late, commented Amy, meticulously adjusting the cutlery. Corporate meetings, replied Emily, smiling as she arranged a vase of wildflowers in the center of the table, but he promised he would arrive on time. The last few months had been transformative. Nathan had kept his promise. They were getting to know each other gradually, building a relationship based on mutual respect and shared values. He came every Sunday for family lunch, exchanging the corporate environment for simple conversations and genuine laughter. Do you think he'll officially ask today? Whispered Beth, her eyes shining with expectation. He brought that special jacket that he only wears for important occasions. Emily laughed, blushing slightly. Whatever it is, it will happen at the right time. Like flowers, there's no point in forcing the bud to open before it's ready. The sound of an approaching car interrupted the conversation. Nathan was arriving, bringing with him not only his father, Richard, but also Hannah, who had become a constant presence in everyone's lives. Forgive the delay, said Nathan, lovingly kissing Emily's hand. Finalizing the documentation for the Lux Veritatis Foundation took longer than expected. The foundation had been a joint idea of Nathan and Emily, an organization dedicated to the preservation of rare botanical species and the support of communities that depended on the land to survive. Hannah now directed it, putting her intelligence and refined education at the service of causes that truly mattered. During lunch, they chatted animatedly about future projects, the community school they were building, the mobile clinic that would bring medical care to remote regions, the microcredit programs for small farmers. After dessert, Nathan invited Emily for a walk through the garden. In its center, protected by an elegant glass structure, the Orchidea lux veritatis continued to bloom, a phenomenon that botanists considered impossible since the species traditionally bloomed only once before entering dormancy for years. It continues to bloom because it's happy here, Emily explained to people who came to admire it. Plants respond to the environment around them. This one feels that it's loved. Standing before the extraordinary flower, Nathan held Emily's hands. There was no nervousness in his gestures, only a quiet certainty. When my father announced that bizarre contest, I was skeptical, he admitted with a smile. I thought, it was just another of his eccentricities. I never imagined it would completely change my life. Mine too, replied Emily softly. These 6 months have shown me that what I saw in those 30 days was not coincidence or a passing impression, continued Nathan. Each day by your side confirms what my heart already knew, since I saw you talking to your plant in the solarium. From a pocket, he took out a small box. Inside, there wasn't a conventional ring, but a delicate piece of art, a perfect replica of the Orchidea Lux Veritatis in white gold and small diamonds, with a single larger diamond in the center. Emily Fields, would you give me the honor of being my wife? Not because a contest determined it, not for convenience or arrangement, but because we chose each other freely, with full knowledge of who we really are. Tears of happiness shone in Emily's eyes as she responded with simplicity. Yes. With all my heart, yes. In the distance, Richard observed the scene with satisfaction. At his side, the old gardener, Anthony, smiled serenely. It worked even better than we expected, commented Richard. Nature always finds its way, replied the gardener. Like roots that seek water in the depths, true hearts always find each other, no matter how unlikely it seems. And so, under the radiant gaze of the rarest flower in the world, two people who would never have met under normal circumstances sealed a commitment based not on convenience or tradition, but on something much more precious. Truth cultivated, with patience, watered with honesty, and blossomed at exactly the right time. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Emily and Nathan has touched your hearts. This narrative about integrity and true connection reminds us that life's greatest beauties often grow away from watchful eyes, taking deep root before blossoming. To follow more equally captivating stories, we've prepared a special playlist with narratives that explore the complexities of human relationships and the surprises that life holds for us. Find it here by clicking on the left side of the screen. If this story brought a smile to your face or a tear to your eye, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a like on the video. Every day we bring new stories that inspire, move, and make you think. Share in the comments. Which moment in this story touched your heart the most?